revenue situation, how we can continue to fund vital programs in the state, and welcome your input and giving us advice on what we can do to help you.
Okay. See the group that is. So what you can do, that's my question. What you can do to help us is have a louder voice and a larger number. Yeah, exactly. No, thank you all very much for coming. It's a pleasure to see you here. As I'm constantly reminded, you can pay for a lobbyist if you've got enough money. You can't pay for private citizens to come here on their own time, on their own dime, to let their voices be heard. And I can't tell you how important that is to these legislators. So a big thank you to each and every one of you for coming today. There's no question, we're in the worst economic time in 80 years. And I did my responsibility and put out an all-cuts budget in December that I couldn't stand. I did so in part without doing an automatic vote to get everybody to understand how bad it is. Rather than running to, okay, what's the revenue, does everybody understand the human face behind the cut? And the only way I think to do that is do your duty, put out an all-cuts budget, and let the debate begin. And to realize that only 39% of our budget is touchable. And what's that 39%? For the most part, it's preschool, higher education, health care, social services, and public safety. All the things that at any given time like this you don't want to cut. So I hope that has helped the public understand. And to those editorials that say, well, she only cuts the stuff that would try to convince us to raise revenue, my response is come sit in my chair and find anything else to cut. There is nothing else to cut. So as I said in my State of the State, that all-cuts budget, in my opinion, does not represent the values of the people of the state. It's not the smart thing to do. It's unjust and it's unfair. So I've got a buyback list. I'm sure some would say it's too big, some would say it's too small. There's every conceivable opinion up there. But the fact of the matter is, in my opinion, we have got to identify and raise revenue. And over the next couple of days, I'll be identifying what I think are some ways in which we can raise revenue. I'm very concerned about raising revenue, that we don't add to the regressivity of our current tax structure. We don't have people buying things today. That's why we're struggling. If we then put a sales tax on everything that they can't otherwise get out of, I think that's a problem. So we're going to have to be smart about what we do here and see if we can't get through the worst economic time in our history since the Great Depression. My number one priority this legislative session is jobs. Because the only way I can see to get out of the recession is get people back to work so they have spending money, the revenue comes in, and we can provide for the services. So I've given a package of job incentives over to the legislature, and anything that you can do to help in that regard, I think is important. We can't have it over 90% of people unemployed and not be demoralized. People want to put food on the table. They want to put a roof over their head. They want their kids to go to school. They want to be gainfully employed. We need to help them make sure that that's a reality for each and every one of them. And I've been working at the federal level with the jobs bill back there. A couple of other things on education. We're going to have to get some things done on education this session, not because it will guarantee us that we will get money and raise the cost, but if we don't do anything, it will guarantee us that we do not, because it's going to be highly competitive. But again, when we do what we do for education, can we remember that we shouldn't be a puppet to the federal government, that we should do what we think is right by the people and the children and the teachers of Washington State? And so this idea of a carrot of 40 points for charter schools when the voters have said no 3 times, to me is not something we should advance. So let's do what we think is right to advance education in the state of Washington and do our best to make sure that we qualify for raising the top. The last area I will tell you is we obviously try to do something for public safety in light of what's happened to our officers, and particularly our Lakewood officers at the end of last year. Those are the priorities this legislative session. But clearly, managing the crisis and getting out of here, holding true to our values as a state, as a citizenry, I think is the #1 priority for the state. So anything you can do to help these legislators, there's not a one of them up there, not a one of them that has been around here any length of time that won't tell you it's the worst legislative session they've ever been a part of. And when When you ask in either of the caucuses, do you have enough votes to do anything? The answer is no. The answer is no. So it's going to be difficult getting to the end line with on time and a budget that works for all of us in this room. Before we are critical about how we're trying to get through this crisis, let me be clear. We don't look like those other states. This is what happened. We're not sending out IOUs. We're not going to a 4-day school week like Hawaii. We're not closing down state government. And I'm not in Argentina. You can always do that. There are good signs that we're coming out of the recession. There are good signs. Unemployment will lag, okay? So too will revenue. So it's going to be hard to get through it, but there are good signs out there. So we got a lot of work to do. Meanwhile, at the federal level, I'm telling you, I will not give up. We need health care reform in this country for those that took the vote. It makes no sense to me for those that took the tough vote, how they can say now they don't want to do anything. If you took the tough vote and come home with nothing, you're in deeper trouble.
Right.
Deeper trouble. We want you to have taken the tough vote, stand up, do the right thing, and come home with health care reform for this country and this state. All this talk out there, particularly with the editorial boards, you know, take away the health care benefits for state employees, furlough the state employees, cut the paychecks of the state employees, let the state employees go. Who provides the services at the end of the day? So the idea that it's okay to say when you arrive at the door, you lost your job and you need unemployment, that we can say, sorry, we're closed. The idea that you would lose your job and have your child not have health care, come to the door and we would say, sorry, we had to let that person go. The fact of the matter is we've got to get smart about who provides the services in the most needy time in the state's history. So rather than taking it out on the backs of state employees, let's understand what their role is, how critical they are in a time of need. And I would ask you, like you just articulated, to say, you know, these are people who are there not for the money. They are not there for the money. They're there because they care passionately about helping the people of the state of Washington. So I hope you'll help out with that message as well. But, how's that looking? You know, we have an interesting idea about income tax in the state of Washington. And we obviously don't have enough votes to get that. But even if we say on the high-end earners, there's kind of this attitude of, well, that's me tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
And so we are reluctant to do
Right.
that. So I think we have to be smart about how we introduce that concept, and we have to ask the question, what are we going to do with the revenue? And if we're smart about what we're going to do with the revenue, and how high up that high end is, I think that is a wonderful way for us to get some regressivity out of the tax system in the state of Washington. And I think we ought to clearly take a look at it. And I will tell you, my #1 priority for the use of those funds is because I don't think you get to that high end unless you've got a great education in the state of Washington. So you ought to pay for the people behind you. You ought to pay for the employees. So I think that's some of the ideas that we ought to put out on the table and see if we can make something like that work.